So tonight we're joined by Matt from Army of Nannies. Now, hi Matt.
Hello, good evening.
So really good to chat to you again. Last week you published a blog called or titled New World Nannies. Can you define New World Nannies to us, please?
Yep, of course, and thank you for this opportunity to do that. I did think when I posted the piece, it would elicit some questions and might need a little explanation. So great opportunity to do that.
That's good.
It starts off with the acceptance that a lot's happened over the last 9 months that's hit every sector, every industry, and of course the nanny sector isn't immune from those changes. And we've seen that, whether that's families, household incomes being reduced, or whether it's work from home parents requiring less bought-in childcare, nannies have been very significantly affected by the pandemic. So we wanted to take a moment to have a look at how both households and nannies have reacted to that sector change and sector pressures. And we did that by looking at existing roles and considering the role dynamics to see whether they've changed within the marketplace. So we commissioned some research and we specifically asked to evaluate different roles, and both families and nannies answered those questions. And at top level, it's very encouraging news that we're seeing nannies flexing in the right direction. What I mean by that is that those roles that families are more inclined to offer, it seems that nannies are more inclined to offer against those roles as well. So that is good news. There were some exceptions, and the exceptions were also helpful because they helped us understand that the data seemed quite robust, because we could explain, for example, where we saw with live-in, nannies are less keen on live-in positions now than they were. They're less likely to consider them, whereas families are marginally more likely to consider them. And we can look at that and unpick it slightly, in that families potentially don't want to be inside a family bubble and trapped in that bubble potentially over a lockdown period, so that's less attractive. Families, on the other hand, would quite like it if nanny was in their world more often than not for risk reasons or perceived risk reasons. The other one where we saw a difference was in school holiday only roles, where families were much more keen on the school holidays and nannies a lot less keen. Now, obviously, that for a family, it's great. When you're working from home and the child's at school, that's fine. You can get your job done. But when school isn't in term, then it's going to be more disrupted to work from home. So we can understand why families want them. But obviously, nannies are less keen on those types of roles, because it's a lot harder for them to create a good career out of just holidays. So we could explain the differences, which was good. So we're seeing, I think optimistically, we're seeing nannies changing and aligning to the pressures of the new world, and hence why optimistically we called that New World Nannies. And there's a little bit more encouraging news as well, that when we asked about pessimism, and nannies scored 5.4 out of 10, which isn't, optimism, sorry, 5.4 out of 10, which isn't a great score. But then when we asked nannies about their acceptance of individually changing and change within the sector, they scored 8.4 out of 10. So I think that's a real testament to nannies, that they can see that there's change and that there's a degree of realism and tenacity baked in there as well, which is good news.
Okay, so most of what you described, or you are describing, is the scenarios are sort of part-time, reduced hours. So this would mean that nannies would have to get 1 or 2, possibly 3 jobs. I mean, surely this is bad news for nannies, isn't it?
Okay, the only scenario that we consider is the scenario of a global pandemic, which has impacted everybody. I think unless you're Amazon and Facebook and probably a couple of others, everybody else has been hit by this. The research merely asks which roles are they more or less likely to consider. So there's nothing new in these roles; they exist in the marketplace already. Yeah. It's just that some of them have become more popular. Now, when we look at the roles that have become more popular or more inclined to offer, not all of them are a shorter term contract. For example, there's nanny share. I think nanny share is a really interesting one. We did a blog post about nanny share specifically, and much of that blog focuses on the effort that families have to put in order to make nanny share work. Right from the off, you've got to find the right family to work with and know the terms that you're going to be sharing a nanny. There's a lot of effort that has to go into making a nanny share good, and that's even before a nanny's been brought into that equation. And I think that agencies have a role in that, in how they can make these roles more suitable or more workable for nannies. Part-time is another one as well. Yes, it is hard to run more than one role at any one time. Can agencies play a role in helping to create a better fit between the roles? I think that's something that we should be really focusing on as agencies. If the roles are changing, how can we adapt and change to help nannies fulfill those roles?
Okay. Sorry, my dogs have now decided to bark. You also mentioned virtual nannying. This sort of has nannies divided, or the nannies that I've spoken to, very much divided. And I chatted to many during lockdown, and as much as they were quite happy to keep in touch with their charges by Zoom and doing a bedtime story or something, they kind of weren't really in favour of what is now known as virtual nannying. You mentioned in your blog that this will undoubtedly be something, so I'm just reading what you wrote, be something that grows over time. So that's really interesting. How do you feel, that's going to progress?
Yeah, I think in the blog we present virtual nannying as a handy resource. It certainly proved itself to be handy over the lockdown. It was something that nannies were able to use to stay connected with their charges and with their families. But I actually think it's a lot bigger than this. It's so much bigger than a bedtime story. And I think if it's seen like that, it's potentially missing a trick. I think that there's a nice term, which is that the families are the Swiss Army knives of the family home. And I think that if we apply that nannies can use the tool to extend their usefulness within the home. For example, if there's a scenario where a nanny is on reduced hours or is part-time, can they extend their hours by offering a virtual service as well? Could they build that into the negotiation? Could they start to actually offer a completely independent service to other families where they become a specialist? It amazes me how many nannies profiles I see and another skill set pops up that you think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I haven't seen that before. That's unique to that nanny, or there aren't very many nannies that have that skill set. How can they use that to benefit more families than just a single family that they're connected to, physically connected to? And that's where I think consultations can play a really interesting role in the future. And we're already seeing nannies do this. We're seeing nannies consulting on meal times, on sleep. They're also there for behavioural support, where they're talking not to the children but to the families. Also, I've heard of nannies that they're there online to give first-time mums help and support, which I think is a brilliant extra ear that a first-time mum has to reach out to somebody with really fantastic childcare experience. So I think with a little bit of creativity, I think it can go well beyond bedtime stories.
I think I do get what you're saying. I mean, obviously, we've got to be very careful in nannies suddenly all becoming experts in, like you say, weaning or whatever, when some of them have only literally done an hour's course online. I think that needs to be followed up to see where their expertise was taken. But the other thing about virtual nannying that I think is quite worrying is the name. I think it needs to be very defined as what you are offering, because otherwise we could go into a lot of safeguarding issues and things like that as well.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be 101 reasons why not to do something new. But I think that where we are, and the challenges that people are creating, that people are facing at the moment, I really think there's something in virtual nannying or online nannying that could be really helpful to families and could just offers another tool for nannies to stay connected and provide and extend their usefulness. And I think that can only be a good thing right now. And yeah, I think there probably are there's more thinking around it, but there are people that are doing this now, and they're doing it very well. So I certainly think it's worth looking into.
Okay, brilliant, lovely. Well, we'd love to hear everybody's nannies and families' views on New World Nannies, virtual nannying, and anything else that we've covered in this interview. So thanks again, Matt, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.